Good morning and welcome to A Morning Practice. I'm Simon Greer. That's Tom Scott, the co-founder and chairman of the Nantucket Project. And we're joined today by Joanna Coles. Joanna, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
That's great. Joanna is an author, an editor, and a media producer. We could say a lot of things about her and her career and her accomplishments and the things she's working on now. We'll let her speak for herself as we jump into the show. But as she said as we got started, she doesn't like to limit herself. And so there's no simple, narrow, this is what Joanna's about. She's about a lot of things, and you'll get to hear more about that. So welcome again, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to have you. So let's just start with a quick round of what we're grateful for. And that's our favorite way to kick off the show. So we'll go to you first, Joanna, just this morning. What are you feeling grateful for?
Well, I think I'm feeling grateful for two things. One is the surprise of all this. You spend so much time in your life controlling things or thinking you're controlling things. And what I am really enjoying is this sense of being out of control. Now, I don't want to sound flippant because I haven't personally been ill. None of my immediate family have been ill apart from my ex-husband had the virus. But I like the feeling of not knowing what's going to happen next. I like the feeling of not knowing what the next 6 months will bring. And we don't have many surprises left in life. In fact, people say actually that the only surprise you have left now is when you have a baby, if you don't tell what sex it is in advance. So I'm grateful for the surprise and unexpectedness of it all. And I am also extremely grateful that I get to have my older son back from college living at home, and my younger son, who was always out, he's a party animal, having the two of them back under the same roof and our ability to recreate family life has been a really unexpected gift. I felt a tremendous amount of sadness, which obviously I didn't want to share with them, at the prospect of them leaving home and embarking on their own life for good. So I feel like having them back has really been unexpected and a delight. And every night we have what children hate, which is a big family dinner. And I'm sure they're texting their friends under the table saying, oh my God, get me out of here. But I am enjoying it. But again, I don't want to sound callous. I'm trying to suck what's good out of a situation which is clearly extremely dramatic and devastating for many across the country.
Thanks, Joanna. And what about you, Tom? What are you feeling grateful for?
Well, I'm going to, like Joanna, I'm just to acknowledge that there, in many ways I'm lucky. I've had a number of challenges in the last month or so. But by and large, it's been a welcome change. I mean, there's certainly things I worry about, things I wasn't worrying about a month ago. But today in particular, I feel grateful for being more healthy. I truly have eaten so poorly in the last several weeks, and I turned a corner a few days ago, which just makes me feel so different. So I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for having you guys here. Joanna, I love your energy, and I'm grateful to have you with us.
Thanks. I was going to talk about, from my own gratitude, and it's interesting, Joanna, what you said about not acknowledging that we're not in control, that I was feeling grateful for the little everyday things. Like I get a little distressed about the bigger picture, but when I focus in, like I hear my son doing his distance learning, and he seems happy in school, and I think I'm grateful for that. Or, we have a full refrigerator with food in it. I'm grateful for that. It's like the little things. We're fine today, right here. I think those are the thing on my mind. They get disrupted by what's it going to be like in 6 weeks? And I think your reminder about we're never in control, but really now we have to face that we're not in control is helpful perspective on that. So thank you for sharing that. Let's, Tom, if you play the meditation tape, we'll just sit for 3 minutes and then we'll reconvene.
We're going to start with a brief sound meditation. So just soften your gaze. You can even look down towards the floor. Notice your breath for a moment, anywhere in your body where it's easy for you to notice it. So that could be at the base of the nostrils. It can be gently moving in your chest. You might even feel the breath moving all the way down into your low belly. Allow your attention to float from sound to sound. And all together, I'm gonna invite in a long breath through the nose for 4 counts. So breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth. Good. One more like that. Breathing in again, 2, 3, 4, and exhale through the mouth. This time, we're gonna exhale with a long extended ah. Just on one tone. So your tone might not match mine. So breathing in nice and full. Thank you so much.
Hey, Joanna, do you do anything like that? Do you meditate in the mornings? Are you a meditator?
Well, I've tried, Simon. I've tried. And I was actually about to take myself, before all this happened, I was about to take myself off on a meditation course, and I was about to spend something like $1,800 on it. And then I thought, well, then the world closed down. So I read Bob Roth's book on it. And then I thought, I think I can do this myself. Don't need to go on a course. It doesn't seem that difficult. So I've been trying, and I would say I've missed the last couple of days. I actually have a tremendous fear of routine. I grew up in a very routine-oriented household, and one of my promises to myself as an adult was I would never live with that sense of routine. Now I appreciate it a bit more. But I find it really difficult to have to do the same thing every morning. So I'm trying to build in a bit of meditation. But what I actually would say my real meditation is going for walks. I walk my dog, luckily, on the beach, because right now I'm staying by the beach. So I'm walking her on the beach every single day, even in the rain. And I find that so meditative. That's my equivalent, I think, of sitting for 20 minutes trying to force myself to say my own phrase over and over again. So I'm kind of I'm trying to meditate. I haven't resolved it.
And during the busiest parts of your career, did you have any kind of a morning practice, like the way you kick the day off, or is it just like jump into it?
No, I think what's interesting about work and family when you're trying to do the two together is that there's very little room for maneuver or slippage. And I think if you're a mom in particular, which is not to take anything away from my ex-husband who contributed a lot to the family, or from dads who do their 50-50. The mom ends up taking a lot of the mental space of running the family. What are we having for dinner? Do we have any ingredients in the fridge? And all, by the way, you wake up thinking about that stuff. You get everybody off to school, you go off to work, you do your thing, and the momentum of life doesn't give you very much time to think about yourself, or to think about the soul and the spiritual nature of everything, because you're physically trying to just blast through the day. So I have often had moments that I put aside during my day to daydream, and that's my equivalent of it. But as I'm coming out of the engine of family life, because as I mentioned earlier, my older son is at college, my younger son's about to go, there are now gaps in the day where I can do more of that. But I would say walking the dog for me is the most contemplative thing I do.
Thanks. Tom, you want to jump in on that, or should we just turn to our journals?
I would just make one comment. I'm more thinking out loud. I'm wondering out loud, which is, for me, this is something that developed later in my life, and became more necessary as the world got more noisy. And I think that noisiness is one sort of factually accurate, which is to say there's just so many more pieces of information that fly around the world these days. And then I would also say that my own tolerance for chaos is diminishing. And maybe that's age, maybe it's a combination of age and clarity. Maybe that when you get clarity, you sort of want to hold on to something that's different. I think some of it relates to perhaps a better understanding of why. Like, why might you want to do that? And why might you benefit from it in ways that could really surprise yourself? I think, you and I had a phone conversation. I was on the train. It was end of the summer last year. And I remember thinking when I got off the phone, like, most of us had been put out to pasture in the last decade or so because all the new ideas were going to come from the young people. Like that was the conventional wisdom. And I've come to believe that, temporarily speaking, because of the massive technological change, that was true for a short period of time. They were creating a big amount of change that the rest of us were reacting to. But I just have this belief that wisdom is going to come into vogue and be necessary. Vogue's the wrong word. It's going to be necessary on a level that is so high, and that our own desire to be part of that, even unknowingly, and the need to have the matching clarity that goes along with that, because that's the tricky part, is how do you know what that clarity is, and how do you know what that clarity can deliver based on the fact that the crazy mind ruled the world for the last 20 years. I guess in a way, I'm asking you to think about that, because I think it could be so good for you, which I don't like to do because I don't like to give you shoulds and things, but I think you could benefit from it in a way that could be good for you and good for us.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I'm going to try again. And I've been listening to a couple of podcasts about meditation, and people who do it regularly are really persuasive about it, as you are. Both of you are. And as your morning practice has been, this morning show that you've been doing, I've really been enjoying. And I hope that when things go back to normal, we can turn it into maybe a live practice that people can drop in on, maybe once a week in certain places. I think it would be really interesting. All right, well, you know what? I'm going to try it again, 20 minutes a day. Do you meditate twice a day or once a day?
I'm doing it now like 3 times a day. I mean, here's the thing, like, if just try this for a little while, because this is what I did. Because, I've done CrossFit and work things and all these things, right? Marathons. Are you saying to me, and am I saying to me, because I used to say this to me, that I can't do nothing for 10 minutes or 20 minutes? Like, I really can't do that? And the answer was apparently yes. Like, I was incapable of doing nothing, which is just so interesting, because that's really what it is. You got to try to do nothing for some period of time. But that's why I go back to, if you knew the return, if you knew the why, well, then it gets easy. Then it's like, of course I should do that. By the way, I'm so with you on the routine thing too, because very similarly, like, I rebelled against that. I rebelled and frankly did well in rebelling against that by living in the moment and just sort of going through life and reacting in real time. But I just, for me, I got sort of sick and tired of being sick and tired, which is just to say I was overdoing it for too long. And then one day woke up and said, I don't have to do it that way anymore. So.
Well, I think that this forced rest, and what I love about it, and again, I don't want to sound trite and insensitive when I say this, because I know for a lot of people this has been deeply, deeply traumatic, and I'm not making light of that. But what I've enjoyed is the permission to not have that crazy life. And the permission is from the outside culture, but the permission is also from myself to not have to be out every night, to not have to be pursuing every opportunity. The ability to step back from that is really nice. And the ability also to spend time with your children when they're forced to spend time with you, for me has been a really unexpected gift. And I'm not someone who says things like that lightly. And I take your point about meditation. If you were going to give me this sort of top 3 selling points of meditation, because one of the issues I have with it is doing it first thing in the morning, because I feel like I've just had 8 hours of doing nothing. Why do I want to sit and do nothing with my brain when it's sort of raring to go? So do you do it first thing when you get up?
I mean,
I do, Simon, but you answer that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the question, like, what are the 3 best arguments from a
yeah, it's a great question.
I was thinking I was speaking to someone who also watches the show yesterday about, like, do you have good meditations and bad meditations, and that kind of, like, how do you evaluate, was the meditation good? And I remember years ago, I went on one of those meditation retreats, and the monk at the place that I went, I asked him, well, how will I know if I'm making progress? And he said, well, maybe every decade or so, check in and see how you're doing. And I thought, decade? I want, like, did I lose weight tomorrow? Like, that's the question, not, decade. And similarly with gratitude, what I've come to see is that I write down 5 things I'm grateful for. I get up and I do meditation. And I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one each day, but I know over years, people who I knew years ago say, you had a really bad temper and you had a short fuse, and gosh, you just don't seem like that anymore. And some of that could just be that I got older, I fell in love, I had kids, like that could have all happened. But I think there's like a long-term shift in my demeanor from the daily, like I wake up and I think about what I'm grateful for before I rush in, and I just sit. And I sit quietly. I don't do some fancy meditation. I don't think I'm particularly good at meditation, but there's like a shift in the tone of my spirit or soul that has come from that daily practice. And so I know it makes me sharper in, day-to-day ways. And I think it makes me more balanced when things happen that are out of my control and how I respond. But I think the big win is over years, there's like just a subtle but very significant shift in how I am. And that's priceless to me.
It's interesting because people who do it really, really advocate for it. I mean, my oldest son does it religiously twice a day now, and he just says, Mum, it makes everything better. And all right, I'm going to try and go back to it. I mean, I have been doing it a little bit, but the last couple of days I fell off the meditation wagon. So I'm going to try and clamber back on. You've both been quite persuasive. I'm going to come back in a decade, and if there's no change, that's going to be disappointing.
Yeah, I think even a few minutes, just sitting quietly is a good start. It doesn't have to be fancy.
Do you both have a mantra?
Yeah.
Mine comes and goes personally, but go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, well, when I meditate, I think I've said this before on the show, I breathe in and I say to myself, strong back, and I breathe out and I say soft front. And it's like to remind myself to stand for what I believe in, but not have to be aggressive in how I relate to the world in defense of those things. But it's also shifted over time. And I think sometimes the meditation that's just on the breath right? Because in a way, to Tom's point, you can add on a lot. I need a meditation bench, and I need a mantra, and I need a timer, and I need a Sanskrit saying that I recite, and I need to, and then it becomes more doing. I think simple time to not do, and so it doesn't need fancy supports.
Well, no, I was just going to say that I heard Simon at one point talking about when thoughts come into your brain, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm thinking," and then it sort of it drifts away. So I have been listening sort of with one ear to what you've both been doing in this morning practice. So it's quite helpful actually being confronted by you on meditation and someone saying it would be good for you, because I think clarity is what one hopes for out of this unexpected time.
Yeah,
that's the thing I feel most strongly about. And I'm a little embarrassed to say it relates to, I have my own insecurities. I have my own anxieties. They can run me around, and all they do is just distract from, I believe I have a purpose. I don't know exactly what it is all the time. And, I don't think it requires believing you have a purpose to sort of buy into what I'm about to say. But for me, it helps that I do believe I have a purpose. And my question is, how on/off my purpose am I, and how do I know? What's the answer? I feel like in the end, it's a journey to yourself, and that clarity, like what Joseph Campbell would call your bliss, is like profoundly stronger than any other energy I have, and a lot of it to me relates to energy, which is to say, one of the things that's happened to me during this work from home period, I get way more done, way more, 4x. 5x, like way more done. I'm getting so much done. Well, that requires a lot of energy, and where do you get your energy from? I think you get your energy from yourself, like your own alignment with your purpose. And it's crazy how much more energy I get in that place. If I'm running myself around with insecurities or anxieties or ego, it's just one big distraction, and it requires way too much energy. And for me, the path out, I have to add, and I know we're going to do this next, this is actually the most valuable thing I do, because in here I write about my meditations, and in here I talk about my purpose, and in here I talk about my intentions for the day and the things I did yesterday and how I feel about those things. This thing doesn't let me not meditate. So every time I write in this, I have to do 3 minutes before I begin. Just picking up this book is like, okay, now I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes. Now that may sound goofy and scary and maybe a little too, I don't know what the right regimented, but I can do that. If I pick this book up, it's literally 11 minutes, because I pick it up, I meditate for 3, and in 7 minutes, I can have half a page at a minimum filled. And the benefit I get out of that is just massive. And again, if I'm doing yoga, the warm-up is 10 minutes, right? You still got an hour and 10 minutes left after that. So the return on time in this kind of thing, I just think is amazing.
So let me ask you something then. Do you think a 3 minutes, because a 3-minute meditation I could do, I've been doing 20-minute meditations, which I actually do set a timer, because occasionally I would not set a timer, and then I would think, I must be at my 20-minute mark by now, and it would be 40 minutes, and then I would feel like the day had gotten away from me. So do you think that 3 minutes is enough?
I think, I would actually start with 3 minutes, because I think it's easy to drift out for 20 and just like space out. I think 3 minutes, it's like 20 breaths, slow breaths in and out. Maybe it's 30, but it's very manageable. And I think at the beginning, your mind is able, right, to stretch, to stay focused on the breath for 30 breaths. And I think 20 can just seem like an eternity. And so I would start with 3. I've even done it like 3, the alarm goes off, and then I do 3 more. And so, that was pretty good. I do 3, 3, 3. And so it's like boxing rounds, right? 3-minute rounds, but you can build on them. So I would just say, I'm going to commit to 3, see how it feels. And when that becomes easy enough, then maybe add 3 more.
All right, that sounds more doable than the 20 minutes, because the 20 minutes when you're also trying to do some exercise and get up and get coffee for people and get them started on Zoom school sounds more doable. All right, I'm going to commit to that.
All right, Tom, we kind of took us there already. So building on Joanna's commitment, about 3 minutes of meditation, let's do 2 minutes of journaling, and then we'll chat about it.
Okay.
Okay, finish up writing your sentence or the idea you're sketching. Joanna, I'd love to hear something you wrote about in your journal. And I found myself writing a lot about things you were talking about earlier in the show. So I do want to come back to a few things, but what did you write?
Well, I wrote actually about the randomness of my introduction to the Nantucket Project. And Tom and I had actually met about 5-6 years ago in a sort of formal office environment. And then neither of us had any time to pick up that connection and do anything with it. And then I happened to be walking my dog on a beach last summer when I ran into another dog walker. And if you have a dog, you know that there's often a connection and you start talking to the other dog walker, and we walked the length of the beach. And he told me about the Nantucket Project. He said, you should really think about going. Let me see if I can help you get there. And so I ended up going, and I really met so many interesting people who've now become an important part of my life. And I'm so grateful for it. And even having the opportunity to tell you both that, and any of the other members of the Nantucket Project community who are listening, it really is a very special bunch of people. And it's not what I was, again, planning. It was completely unexpected. It was a random connection with someone who was also walking their dog on the beach. And how those random moments in time can lead to something as long as you're open to them. So I think that sense of being open sounds so trite and cliched, but being excited about things which are unknown and which are new. And that's what I think will come out of this time, which is very heavy on the one side, but on the new side on the upside gives us all permission to do things differently. And I think a lot of us have been looking for that permission. We just didn't feel we could accept it.
Joanna, you said earlier that you took time throughout your day to daydream, like to be open to those moments. Can you say more about that? I was so interested in the phrase, like permission to allow yourself to daydream and see where it goes.
Well, I do think one of the things that our generation had that the younger generation doesn't have is the ability to be okay with solitude. And social media in particular has really plugged that gap where you have that moment on your own where perhaps you're waiting for somebody, or you're between school and home or meetings, and there's almost a sort of sense of panic sets in that you have an unaccounted for time. And I think in previous ages, you would use that time to think about yourself or to contemplate things, or maybe to plan new things. And when I was younger, I used that time a lot to write because there wasn't anything else to do. And I used to write all Sunday afternoons. It was how I started writing. It's how I became a journalist, actually, because I loved it so much. And now I think we have our phones, which are really designed to plug those moments of solitude. And so we don't get the breaks that our mind needs, just almost to kind of, like a dishwasher cycle, rinse through some of the things during the day, because instead we're jamming it with memes and ideas and texts and an unnecessary communication, which is funny, perhaps, but for the most part isn't very nutritious. It's almost like the phone and social media exists to keep you fed, but what you're getting is a mental obesity, which isn't much use. And actually it slows you down. I feel that a lot with social media. And actually in this last few weeks, I've become much more disciplined. I go on Twitter once or twice a day. I go on Instagram once or twice a day. I use Snap a bit more because it's my connection with my friends, but I'm much more disciplined than I was. And as a result, I've got much more time. And so I always enjoyed moments in New York when I was driving around in the back of a cab, because I don't like being on my phone in a cab. It makes me feel sick. And so just staring out of the window and just thinking about things, and weird things pop into the back of your head, which don't necessarily mean anything, or sometimes they do. And I would find I would get my best ideas when I was just not focusing on having a good idea, but just letting whatever mass is in here float around a little bit on its own.
Yeah, I love that. The meditation teacher who I mentioned, who said check in a decade. The other pearl of wisdom that he offered me was, I used to get very agitated when people were late to meet me, like it was disrespectful and they're wasting my time. And he said, it's a gift. Like they gave you the 3 minutes or the 7 minutes or the 11 minutes to just do nothing, to just sit there. And I think I now notice his voice telling me that, and my desire to grab the phone, and that it's like a struggle between, can I just be here for 3 minutes, 7 minutes with nothing to do, or do I have to check? And that same spirit, I think that you're mentioning, is that quiet space throughout the day is really valuable for the brain, for the soul, for us as people.
Yeah, and I really think we don't yet know the impact on our brains of spending so much time on our phones. And of course, you know, there are unbelievably smart engineers whose life's work it is to make you spend as much time as you possibly can on a phone, because that's how they get paid. It's how they get, you know, how their business is built, by grabbing the bottom of your brainstem and keeping it compelled to be on the phone. And when you actually spend some time away from it, you realize you can do, and that the world is not coming to an end. And it's really, really good to know that.
When we first started doing the show, we talked about whether it was going to be called a morning routine or a morning practice. And I feel like how routine can mean routine, meaning kind of bland and restrictive, rather than life affirming and, you know, supportive of creativity. I think you got at that with your description of routine from your childhood. And Tom, I just wondered if you would say a word about like how the routine is not routine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to do one thing before I do that, which is I just want to react to what Joanna said about her journaling, if that's okay, Simon.
Yeah.
One is I appreciate it. And generally, I know that our work is quite misunderstood. And I say that because I just was on a call earlier today. We've really never marketed ourselves. I've never made a press release in 10 years. We've done almost no marketing. There's good in that and there's bad in that, but we were sort of debating that question based on some new things we're doing right now. The irony is I was the co-CEO and CMO of Nantucket Nectars. Like, I am a marketing person. I just got interested in other things in the last 10 years or so. But I also appreciate your, I might be giving myself too much credit here, but I think I can kind of sniff spirit when I'm with people. Just what kind of person is this? And is this person presenting as themselves? As much as possible. We all have a bit of an act. I mean, we all sort of posture a little bit. But I had this sense that you were like that when we met a while ago. But I also knew at that time that, we certainly were, and we still are, in a world where the media landscape is just profoundly different than what it was, let's say, in the year 2005 and before. Just profoundly different. And so we were all kind of working our way through it. And doing it in a way that I think for people who've been around for a little while, it's almost harder for us because we have to unthink a lot of things all of a sudden, which is was, I think, really challenging. But, what I was writing about, I watched last night the Grateful Dead 6-part series on Amazon Prime. It's 6 parts. I've watched it 4 times. But I wanted to watch it with one of my sons who's kind of gotten into the Grateful Dead, which I love. They're my favorite band, and I love that. And it starts with Jerry Garcia, Robert Hunter, Pigpen, and a woman who would drive around Northern California and basically explore. Like, they were opening themselves up to On the Road with Jack Kerouac and the Beatnik movement and all these different things. And man, when I was watching this with my son, I paused it and I said, can you imagine driving around with your friends and your only access to the world is the 4 of you? Just how profoundly different it is to live in that world and to live in this world that we live in now. And, I could so appreciate when you were talking about looking out the window of the cab and just how meaningful that moment is. Like how beautiful that moment is, because I'm as tempted as anybody by the pace of life. And I was thinking this morning, like, do I still have my Mosaic status on JetBlue? Seeing as I haven't flown in like 6 weeks, and I was like, oh, I hope I still have it. And then there was a part of me that thought, oh, I hope I don't have it. I don't want to go back to like running 1,000,000 miles an hour around the world and letting the world control me instead of me having a relationship with the world that is healthier. Anyway, I just said about 1,000,000 things, but you made me think about a lot of things. And I want to think about a pledge, Simon, in that regard. Like, I don't want to take the old me back into the world. I don't want to be that person again.
It's so funny. That's where I wanted to go as maybe the last part of our conversation with Joanna. You said, and I can't remember if you said it after, I think you said it before journaling, but I wrote about it. I'm not going back to the life I had before. Right. And that's really, Tom, what you were talking about now. And so Joanna, are you pessimistic about, will you go back to it? How won't you? What will be different?
Well, I think because of what I do, the businesses that I'm in, and I'm in television production, I'm in writing, I don't think they will be quite the same, actually. So I won't be able to go back into it. But when I look back at how much I was traveling, I was going to Los Angeles sometimes once a week, which is a long time to spend in the air in one of those metal tubes called a plane. I think I'm not sure I want to do that as much, and I want to spend more time, I think, with people, and I'm going to spend much less time on social media than I did before. I don't need to feel that connected to people I don't know. I don't know why I was spending so much time on it. I mean, it's not like I was a crazy addict spending 5 hours a day, but I think it was constantly the urge to check the phone, and that's where my next mood or moment of connection was going to come from. And now I realize that's I have more control than I thought, and I don't want to be like that anymore.
I've been reaching out to people who I've been disconnected from, people I haven't seen in a long time or talked to in a while. And there's something about, because we're physically being disconnected, the deliberate choices to connect. And I wonder if that's part of what you're saying, is that we have more say, more control over how we connect and who we connect with than we may have imagined we did before this.
Yeah, I think giving yourself permission to slow down and not to have to do all the things that you were doing before, because actually you realize that being forced to slow down, at least in my case, and again, I don't want to make I don't want to be trite about what other people have been going through, but actually it's been super reassuring and helpful and nice, and all the things that your parents always told you that you thought they were wrong about.
So maybe in 3 months we get back together on this show and we see, how have we done? Did we live up to our pledge to not go back to life as it was? And what does it look like in the new world order to live the best of what we found during this time, and also honor, as you both said, the things that have been just terribly, terribly hard for a lot of people as well?
Yeah. Well, right. I hope we do that, and we all have to hold each other to account.
Yep. All right. Well, I'll pledge to do it.
Good.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Joanna. So good to have you on this morning. It's great to spend time with you and to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Joanna. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, Tom.
Yeah, let us know.